All right. Hello, LinkedIn family. How's everyone doing? We are live on LinkedIn. Thank you all for showing up. Tony, Jason, how's it going, guys?
Can't complain. Can't complain. Not bad. It's snowing like crazy right now, so that's fun and horrifying at the same time.
Yeah, it's great. We're having. I wasn't ready for this snowfall. Hey, let me see if I can get the snow because I have a window. And let me see if I can get the snow. Do you guys see the snow coming down?
Maybe drop a comment where you're live streaming from, where you're watching this from. Show us a picture of the outside. If it's nice, if it's snowing like this. It's
Look at
cold
that
right now
snow.
in Montreal.
Look at that awesome snow.
Yeah.
And I have my appointment to get my snow tires installed on my big Ford F-150 tomorrow. So I'm a day late as usual.
Very nice, very nice. Why don't you guys tell us what we'll be talking about today in the live, and I'm gonna just silence myself and be behind the scenes. All right?
Yeah, so thanks, Kyler. Today it's Magento versus Shopify, and what I like about this particular episode is that as a company, we only work with Magento. All right, so we're going to actually debate Shopify versus Magento just objectively. It doesn't matter that the company only does Magento because honestly, I'm a big fan of Shopify because I'm a big fan of software as a service. I'm a big fan of taking something off the shelf that's cheap, fast, works well, because it's obviously cheaper, right? Jason is one of our senior Magento developers here at Simply PHP. And yeah, this is going to be the debate. I want to know pros and cons of Magento versus Shopify. And so let's get it going. So Jason, I am a major fan of Shopify, as you know, even though we do not work with Shopify. That's the awesome part. So when is it? And it's funny, we just had a call with a potential client this morning, and
Yeah.
we were talking about this very thing. And it turns out that they have so many customizations that it doesn't make sense in their eyes anyway. And we still haven't agreed with them or disagreed with them yet. But in their eyes, Magento was the way to go. So I guess the way to start this, when is it a good time to use Shopify?
So, okay. So right off the bat, this is a really interesting question. Shopify versus Magento. It comes up so often. Someone's like, "Oh, what's better, Shopify or Magento?" And honestly, as I've discussed in sort of other videos highlighting this topic, is I think the premise of that question, the starting point, it's already under a bit of a falsehood. Okay, because what Shopify is trying to capture, it being a SaaS, so a software as a service, and what Magento is trying to capture is kind of two different markets. So asking the question, which is better, is going to be a function of what your requirements are, what you need. What do you need from your e-commerce thing? Yes, there are parts of it I can compare the caching mechanisms to Shopify's. How good is the exposed API out of the box of Magento versus Shopify's API? In that sense, it's kind of like you're comparing a pickup truck versus an EV, so some sort of small mini electric vehicle. Yeah, sure, they have tires, so to speak, but the question is, are you something that's going to be someone's going to be doing a lot of per se manual labor and trucking in wood somewhere? Then clearly you need you need the pickup truck, and the smart car is not exactly going to get it done. Um,
Is there an obvious no-brainer?
uh,
You need Shopify. Like I know we're gonna get in. We have an hour, so we're gonna get into a
yeah,
bit more details. But someone who's not necessarily technical and not a developer, although we have almost 10,000 followers on LinkedIn now.
yeah.
Yes, Tyler, congrats, buddy. But is there a no-brainer Shopify?
Yeah.
Sure.
So very simply, Ken, sort of to highlight this, and this is what clouds a lot of people. So generally, sort of the rule of thumb is if you're a small business or something, Shopify is kind of your no-brainer. In large part, that does hold true from the perspective of budget. It's certainly cheaper to be on Shopify than paying a Magento developer and dealing with the hassle of sort of getting the Magento up and running.
Mhm.
But at the same time, again, going back to the premise of the question, you could be an extremely large company with a big budget. If Shopify meets your requirements and you don't need sort of, again, it's sort of the ease of use of Shopify versus the flexibility of Magento. If you don't need necessarily the flexibility of Magento, so you have, let's say, a basic website, but you sell a lot, it doesn't matter. Shopify is still your right way. So the sort of obvious answer is, do you have any unique requirements that aren't captured by Shopify? If so, then you got to consider something like Magento, where you have the flexibility. But if you're really just generically going to sell a couple of products and you just need a basic cart functionality and you're just going to change the design, which you can totally do in Shopify, then it doesn't matter whether you have a startup where you're in debt, or whether you're, Microsoft sitting with, 50 billion in the bank. Shopify is probably the right solution for you there. So you really got to take it.
Is it really about what you're selling? So if you're selling a very basic product, I don't know, I keep saying pillows, but if you're selling pillows and you can't customize those pillows other than, choosing the different type, the different color and things like that, then it's basically a Shopify solution that's for you, right? When do you start having to start weighing both platforms and saying, oh, I'm not sure, we might need more customizations? Is it because the product gets complicated?
I wouldn't say per se the product gets complicated. I mean, listen, Shopify can handle sort of group products, bundled products, and like I say, a T-shirt with multiple colors. This is not out of Shopify's depth at all. I don't think the standard per se is the complexity of your products. It's more sort of, do you have any sort of customers? Give an example. I have a client recently that they wanted a feature with that. Anytime you added something to cart, depending if it met a certain rule set, this sort of it added an additional free item to the cart. This is an example of something that would be very challenging to do in Shopify, but Magento sort of set up already to capture this. In Magento, it's very straightforward. You put a plugin on your quote, basically your quote processor, and then you have that rule that checks, okay, what have you added to the cart? Is a certain rule criteria met? And you add this additional item to the cart. Anytime you need some sort of event-based customization on the checkout, you need to send it to this ERP or this LMS, whatever. This is something, a fairly standard process that could be pretty quickly done in Magento. Rather in Shopify, it would be a headache. So again, once you start having the level of customization where you have total control of the project, that's where Magento becomes a solution for you. And then obviously, yes, I know Shopify now has a new feature with the B2C and the B2B website, but Magento also handles multi-website functionality as well. And that goes beyond, and we haven't touched base into sort of the fact that Shopify is proprietary. They technically own the code, so they kind of own a big part of your business when you're on them, rather than versus Magento where you have full ownership. That will be probably later on. I don't want to give a big spoiler there.
Yeah, but before we get into the owning the code or not, basically owning your business or not, can you get away with not having to hire a full-time developer with Shopify? Because I know with Magento, anything you want to do, you're basically going to have a developer, right? You're going to have a book. So, In my mind, if I'm on Shopify, I'm not going to have to hire a developer. Is that accurate?
I mean, that's the beauty of Shopify with the basic package of $25 or whatever it is right now, whatever, $50 a month. Maybe in one weekend, they offer even 6 default template themes. Most people won't use the default template themes. They'll buy another theme. But other than managing sort of the theme and a bit of the look of the website, it's a SaaS, and it's the service is already there. The backend's already there. It works well. It's generally speaking bug free. You don't have to deal with any of the deployments, any of their CIs, all that. It's all
that's so attractive to me.
Yeah, so literally in a weekend you could spin up a site in Shopify. And Magento, that's not really the case. Magento, you definitely need a developer. You do a fresh install of Magento, and that might not work so cleanly. You're going to run into an issue when the site compiles for the first time, and your developer has to sort of figure that out.
It's not for to me. It's not for a person that's either not a developer, doesn't have access to the funds to pay for a developer. Obviously, let me ask you one more, just along the lines of this. Is if I'm someone who's a startup and I'm not even sure, and this is what I advise people, like anyone who's a startup who calls me and wants us to build them an e-commerce site on Magento, I always advise them, if you can, try to figure out, number one, if you even have a business yet, okay? So, because a lot of people have great ideas and they're gonna spend lots of money on a Magento site, but they're not even sure if they have a viable business. So now, but my question is, if I do take my advice and set up on Shopify just to figure out if I have a business. Now, if I experience wild success, all right, so everyone wants my pillows. They're awesome. I'm selling, all of a sudden I'm selling millions of dollars of pillows and I'm on Shopify. Is that a problem? Do I have to eventually go to something like Magento because of my success? Now, forget about the fact that I'm not going to complicate the sale. It's still going to be colors, red, white, blue, whatever you want. Is my success going to cause a problem because I'm on Shopify versus Magento?
No. Very, very straightforward. No, no. Now you could sort of, in some sense, what entails a growing business. A growing business means your requirements also grow. Now you might have a bit of sort of some clairvoyant thinking, where you might sort of some very forward thinking that, oh, my requirements will go, so maybe I'm going to need some. Eventually, I won't need a basic e-commerce or a very cookie cutter e-commerce website, which is what Shopify offers. And I'll need something that requires heavy duty amounts of sort of custom functionality to it, which is obviously then sort of you're looking at Magento as your solution for that. So maybe some forward thinking in that sense, that would maybe could be an argument that you would go even from the beginning to Magento. But my sort of perspective on that is, you always want to establish your business first. So I would say go with the hassle-free Shopify. The product that it's going to be cheaper for you. You can focus more of your budget on marketing costs, build up your business, and then if you realize that you've reached sort of the limited capacity of Shopify and what you want to do requires a system that you have flexibility to do it in, then you could start considering migrating to a Magento. I would rather migrate at that point to a Magento website and then build up whatever requirements you have at that point. But I would start still with Shopify. Unless you really know that you are going to hit fairly soon where you need customization to a level that Shopify can't provide.
But when you say capacity, Jason, you're not talking about purchases and visitors. That's not the problem. It's just that if you succeed, if you're wildly successful, sometimes a lot of people start to complicate their lives and start to say, well, maybe we should add this customization and let them build their own pillow type of thing. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. Don't worry. Don't worry about the volume. I mean, some of the highest trafficked websites are on Shopify. You have those YouTubers.
Like what? Like what? Who's on Shopify?
I mean, just
two off the top of your head.
I mean, I hate saying this name, but let's say like Jake Paul, for instance, and I'm just using them as popular YouTubers. Paul. Okay, yeah. So it's a popular YouTuber. Okay, no one really likes him, but anyhow, so he'll do sort of these pop shops every time there's sort of some sort of trending thing he'll do, and he'll create he'll create some sort of like what do you call them, like sweater or something. He'll pop up a Shopify site, and then when he links it to his network of influencers to sort of advertise this, they hit massive amounts of traffic and they're able to sustain it. So
they're using Shopify. I've also heard. Can you give me like a big e-commerce player though that uses Shopify, like Adidas, Nike? Are there any like that? No. They're all on.
I'm trying to think from your very big like Fortune 500 style companies. I mean, you could Google right now.
Tyler, can you Google? Can you Google? Can you Google? Cut that one out. Can you Google top e-commerce websites, Shopify?
Yeah, just Google it. You'll get a list. But with regards to like companies like Nike and stuff, I haven't checked in a while, but I'm pretty sure they're on Demandware. That's something we could also talk about, is a bit Demandware with that captures as well. So that Demandware is an e-commerce platform that's optimized for really large scale businesses. A lot of the big companies like Nike's and Adidas are most likely on Demandware.
Okay. But I'd like to know, it would be interesting if maybe someone could even put it in the comments. It'll eventually catch up to us. But just so you know, everyone, the comments are a little bit behind. They're about a minute or two behind, but Kyler will let us know if there's any answers to our questions. So yeah, what's a brand that I would know, a big e-commerce brand that I would know that's on Shopify? That's any luck, Kyler? Oh, yeah. Okay. If you can't find, it's fine. It kind of answers my question.
Kylie Cosmetics, right there. So Kylie Jenner, one of the Kardashian sisters, who's
You're up on all these
a billionaire. Well,
personalities, eh, Jason?
there's a reason for
Tell
that.
me,
There's a reason for that. I mean, think about it logically. These people need shops. They're selling basic products. They need to sell in mass these products. So they just need to spin up a website like that anytime there's something trending. Shopify is probably the easiest way to do that. And,
oh, you know what? Oh,
and,
sorry, go ahead.
and second fold, like companies like Nike already have their own big custom platforms. So they don't really have a need for Shopify. But if you're new right now, Shopify is still kind of relatively new in the business sense as a viable option, especially for even larger companies now as it sort of gained popularity.
I also have another sort of Shopify Pro. I'm not a pro, but I mean, pros and cons. Another pro of Shopify is that I was told by a prospect a couple of years ago that his designer, so the graphic designers he has in-house, are able to manipulate Shopify a lot easier than Magento. Magento, they kind of put their hands up and say, oh, I can't touch anything on Magento, but they're able to on Shopify. Is that a thing too?
Real quick, I don't know if you guys want to see this, but I found a list of 37 of the biggest brands on Shopify.
Put them up. Put them up. Put them on the list. I mean, on the screen. Can you share your screen with us?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. This is really very professional. Is that the right window? Okay.
Can you see?
All right. So scroll down. Yeah. You can see perfectly. What do we got? Bulletproof. Okay, keep going. Keep going. Bulletproof. Hasbro. Oh, I know Hasbro. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. The Economist. Heinz. Whoa. All right. Crabtree and Evelyn. Sunday Somewhere. Penguin Books.
There's 37 businesses on this list.
Let's go to 10. Let's go to top 10. BBC. Red Bull. Okay. Cool. All right. Thanks, Kyler. You can take that off. So what were we saying? Oh, yeah. I was talking about designers working for this prospective client were voicing that they were able to actually work with Shopify.
Yeah. So the UI UX for the admin panel for Shopify it's a 10 on 10. So I mean, Shopify has CMS capabilities just like Magento does, and it doesn't surprise me that the actual CMS is easier to use in Shopify. They don't have to deal with sort of headaches and Magento. You can set it up if the cache clears or not when you sort of update these sort of things. You can. You got kind of control over that. So depending on I've seen a lot of people complain about your caching, and it gets a little bit more complicated when using Varnish and Magento. So it doesn't strike me from an easy use perspective. Again, always ease of use tends to always lean on Shopify, even for CMS sort of operations. I mean, and on Shopify, you could obviously with fairly ease you can manage I think it's liquid files they use for their templating, and you can manage that as well.
So Jason, in all fairness, so I asked you when it would be a no-brainer to use Shopify. Now, when is it an easy decision, a no-brainer to use Magento? Do you have? Is there like certain?
It's hard to pinpoint an exact. Oh, I absolutely need it at this point. Obviously, there's a couple of trigger points that Magento does well. Like I spoke about the and if you have any sort of multi-website functionality, Magento dominates the market for the ideal solution for that. But when you start to realize that the customizations you need goes beyond just templating customizations, and you need some sort of any sort of backend logic functionality and some heavy duty stuff, then you got to start thinking, okay, this is stuff that you can do in Magento because you can edit the code in Magento. You could override things, you could add observers, plugins, blah, 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 blah. The list goes on. And those things are easier to take care of in Magento. So, and then obviously you also have to take in consideration your budget is a limiting factor. Even if you desperately need Magento, you need its sort of capabilities of changing certain things that you can't do in Shopify. If you don't have the budget, it's a non-starter from there. So budget's always definitely an overriding sort of standard when making this decision. And once, if you determine one, you have the budget, then you got to really make a business decision. The extra flexibility I'm going to get from Magento is worth the overhead and headache of, managing the website on your own, hiring a developer, making sure your developer's good. Your developer might quit. You got to get a different developer. Maybe you go to an agency. Agencies cost more than getting a guy just up Upworks. It's a totally different game than, Shopify. Shopify, it's really, you can
Well,
do.
I don't know if I agree with you that an agency costs more, because honestly, a lot of times you'll end up with a developer that doesn't even know what they're doing. Case in point, the prospective client we spoke to this
Yeah.
morning
Yeah.
has to do an entire rebuild. So to be honest with you, not going to an agency actually cost this person a fortune. And it can also have business ramifications as well. Just lower your webcam a little bit, buddy, because you're starting to get a little bit cut off on me. Want to see those big pipes?
Yeah, eventually I was actually trying to show off my,
Yeah,
as you can see, it's a 30 foot,
yeah. So that's a definite problem. Choosing Magento because you think that your business absolutely needs those complicated customizations, and then going with the wrong person could actually be devastating. That's almost a whole.
yeah, I mean, this slightly alludes to a different, now you're sort of asking the question, oh, do I go to an agency or do I hire, a single dev somewhere? Maybe you found them on upworks.com. And then I would sort of always kind of lean on the side of going to the agency. But this is, again, one of the things you got to consider when you're looking at Shopify versus Magento is, now this is sort of handled if you go to an agency, but because a lot of people, you have a product, you focus on your single product. You're not a developer and you're not a dev agency either. What do you know about hiring developers or not? How on earth are you going to know if this guy's good or not? If you're selling pillows and you don't know anything about, coding on the online web, but if you go to the agency, yes, they might cost more than if just paying one single developer, but they're a dev company. They know what to do when they hire, and when they hire staff, and and the continuity to your project, because developers like to jump around. I might not be here tomorrow. Who's going to work on the projects that I'm on? That when you have an agency, that's all encapsulated by the agency. They manage that. So technically, you view the agency as a bit of a black box. They deal with all the development operations, including the hiring and management process, which is, it's a big thing. A lot of people underestimate that task. I've seen a lot of clients in the past come to us and say, yeah, I hired this guy, and it's been absolute hell on earth trying to manage them, and especially if they're on the other side of the world, it's tough. So I always, generally speaking, I do highly recommend agencies over single developers if possible. But a lot of times, some clients, they just need the budget restrictions. So they try to find someone cheap online to do it, and then it's just a rabbit hole. You got to kind of hit a lottery for that to work out, sort of. And at that point, you're better off modifying your business rules to stay on Shopify in the meantime until you sort of have the budget to take the step to Magento. And
that's the magic word right there. Like a lot of people can actually trim down their requirements and trim down their customizations to fit into Shopify, just to figure out if you have a business or not. And you know what? When you become successful, then you can afford to move to something like Magento, where you're actually going to need a full-time developer, and not just some developer that you're going to find online at some freelance website. You're going to need, you're going to need a company to take care of your business. Now, speaking of taking care of your business, Kyler, is there anything interesting in the comments before we go on to ownership of code? Because that's a really good topic as well.
Yeah, there's a few comments, so let me just pull them up now.
Questions?
So yeah, there's about 2 or 3 of them. So Rico, he's always a big fan of ours.
Yeah.
Jumping on. His question's around WooCommerce and how it's recommended for small stores, small businesses. And is it possible to be in the ring, of this conversation with WooCommerce, Shopify versus Magento, and WooCommerce, or if it's a totally different thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd like to stick on Magento versus Shopify, but Jason, if you have a quick reply to that,
I mean, most people, if you have any sort of greenfield aspect to this, where you can sort of choose your project, I wouldn't recommend WooCommerce. Most people that are going to go WooCommerce is they have already a WordPress website, and then they want to sort of convert that into an e-commerce with e-commerce capabilities, and that's when they're going to attach, because WooCommerce is an extension to WordPress. That's when they're going to sort of head to WordPress. If you don't like, and sometimes that could be the right case if you're already just for, from a headache perspective. And by WooCommerce, you have full customization capabilities as well, albeit it's not as well done as Magento. However, I don't recommend this unless you're already on. So it's like a more specific case, and if you already have a WordPress website, I would not recommend as a solution.
Okay. Anything else, Tyler?
Yeah, another one. I was just asking, where do you see the future of Magento?
Oh boy, this is like asking me where do I see the future of the Toronto Raptors? With all the bad contracts they're starting to have now.
But what about to add on to that question? That's a great question, by the way. Who asked that?
The question before or the question now?
The one you just asked. Yeah. Oh, it's okay. It's fine. I just wanted to call them out because that was a good question. But you know what? Where do you see the future of Magento, and where is Magento now? I would just add to that question, Jason. So where is Magento now? As far as latest versions, are the new versions buggy? And then the other person.
Okay, so a couple of things. The best answer to this question, we got to look a bit of the history of Magento. Okay, so Magento 1, which basically Magento 2 came out early 2016. Magento 1 kind of before that had market dominance. Magento 1 was the name sort of in e-com. Whether you were small business, medium business, or large business, Magento 1 was sort of the go-to solution. So Magento 2 gets a lot of its popularity by sort of living off the name of Magento 1. Now, since then, a couple of things have happened. I don't think Magento 2 has been as effective for its time as Magento 1 was. And also the competitive space is now so big now with the introduction of SaaSes like Shopify, BigCommerce, and then, SAP has their own e-commerce platform. It's just now the space has got a lot more competitive. So Magento 2 kind of, what these sort of all these platforms are doing is, instead of trying to be an all-encompassing one solution, I'm going to capture the market for small, medium, and large-sized businesses, they all realize it's better to sort of have a more niche approach. So Shopify does indeed sort of, because of its ease of use and its price point, does indeed tailor for smaller-sized businesses whose requirements are likely not as big, so they don't even need the customizations, blah, blah, blah. Now, Demandware has sort of mulled before. They sort of specialize in high-end businesses sort of only. And then Magento's trying to capture the medium to high-end scale. Generally speaking, those are people that are going to, big businesses are going to have their own warehouses, or they're going to manage their own ERPs and stuff. And then, connecting that to Magento might be easier than Shopify. It might be, although Shopify API is pretty solid as well. But then they'll also need some custom stuff on their website, whatever it be. You let your imagination go wild, and Magento's the right solution for them. Usually these people have multi-websites, a B2B website, a B2C website, a whole bunch of custom shipping rules at the checkout. Magento is great for custom shipping rules, amongst other custom checkout stuff. So Magento really, they're sort of trying to get into that niche of the medium to the high scale and high size businesses. Now, sort of the future.
Sorry, Jason, just a quick question. Did Magento 2 kind of come on the scene to compete with Shopify a little bit? Because I think when they released Magento 2, Shopify was becoming a big player in the space, right?
No, but the intention of Magento 2 wasn't to get rid of Shopify. The intention of Magento 2 was to migrate to a more modern architecture, sort of the design of how the structures are handled internally with the sort of override system. Magento 2 had kind of a bit of Magento 1, had a bit of decoupling with sort of the front end files in the back, and now you can encapsulate all in the module structure, and then honestly just using modern frameworks, and even that they kind of started developing Magento 2 kind of before React.js and all that fancy stuff became popular. So they ended up going with Knockout.js coupled with Require.js. And that's like, I don't know, maybe I want to jump out my window sometimes because of that. Any Magento developer will appreciate that as well, trust me. But sort of to continue on the future of sort of Magento. So now in 2.4, they're clearly trying to go towards PWA. So they're definitely heading in the direction of headless development, so headless e-com, so meaning that the back end would be totally decoupled from the front end. So hence why they're adding more GraphQL support. So from a technical perspective of where the code is going in future, you can kind of see that they're starting to phase out already their sort of version of the front end with with its knockout JS and its block template structure. They're going to go for a more, PWA headless style, which means you can just plug and play any sort of front end, and you just attach it basically through the API to the Magento backend. That's in one sense. But then kind of more broadly, where is Magento trying to go? It's hard to speculate ever since Adobe acquired it in 2018 for $1.7 billion. They didn't buy that to do nothing with it. So I suspect, and Adobe's not a big fan of open source, but I guess because of sort of Magento is known as one of the open source solutions, that probably won't change. I wouldn't worry too much about Magento not being open source, but you can already see how they're starting to sell the cloud package. More and more is becoming a little more a service that they want to kind of sell rather than lose a bit of the open source functionalities. And where do I kind of see it? I'm going to assume Adobe's going to try to integrate it with their sort of Adobe Creative package. I think maybe in the future, my sort of best guess is you'll be creating the front end of your website using Adobe products, sort of, and then your backend will be powered by Magento, and they'll probably try to really push more and more to have people buy the cloud option where it's managed hosting already for you, and you could kind of view Magento a bit of a mass Magento as a service. That might be the direction they're going, but again, I can't really predict what Adobe's doing because
of course,
I don't work for them.
Do you how are just to go back to the original question I had, was how are the new releases coming? Are they smooth? The new versions. Right now, you said we're at 2.4.
Smooth and Magento is an interesting term. So I haven't had an opportunity yet to really mess around too much with the 2.4 package. So 2.4 came out, I can't even remember when it came out. But anyways, 2.4.1 I think came out just recently. So that's usually when they release, let's say, a new version of 2.3 or 2.4. This usually comes riddled with bugs. Which is normal. It's a major release point. So that's why I usually wait before you recommend to a client for the 2.41 or the 2.42, the second or third minor release of that major release to come out before you actually use it, because usually by then they'll have crunched a lot of the bugs.
Okay, so now in our Magento versus Shopify theme, okay, now you just explained when you're upgrading to the latest version. Justifiably, there's bugs, which is normal. Now, tell me about Shopify. Do we have to go through that as a Shopify shop owner?
No,
I don't think so, right? It doesn't
not
even
really.
exist.
Not really, unless you've messed up your template a lot. But no.
Okay.
So
to me, that's another advantage of.
Yeah, like you said, Shopify, it's really, when you have it, you focus on just using it and building up your business. You don't have to worry, not really much at all, other than maybe the templating and the style and design. But even that, if you get one of the big templates in Shopify, they're pretty good at being able to change kind of what you need from the admin anyways. Albeit you have that kind in Magento too, but the themes in Magento just stay away from. Do it yourself.
Okay, cool. So now let's segue into Kyler, unless you have any. No, don't think there's any more questions. Thanks everybody for participating in the comments and everything. It's great. Love it. Hi. As you know, it's snowing pretty heavily in Montreal all day.
There is a comment really quick, just to jump on in. This was said a little bit earlier in the conversation. But he was saying that it's up to requirements and budget. When you guys are talking in the beginning, the difference between the two. But agreed. I wanted to bring it up because in case you wanted to elaborate on that, that was an earlier on comment.
Yeah, agreed. That's the thing, right? If your requirements, in my opinion anyway, if your requirements allow you to stay with Shopify, like I'm in the Shopify corner 10 times out of 10, unless now we're going to get into the ownership of the code, Jason. Now with Magento, you download the code, it's yours, right?
Yeah.
Am I right so far?
Yes.
With Shopify, you're using a software as a service, so you are actually using their. Yeah,
they host it. They own the code. They own the code. So technically, they can decide for whatever reason. Well, I mean, yes, albeit kind of when you open a store, there's sort of a bit of a contract there. So, but just to give an example, that they could technically have final say on if they want you on their platform or not. So in one sense, a lot of merchants are not comfortable with that, knowing that Shopify
Yeah.
kind of owns their business in some sense. Um,
We
give
actually
it-
had I think you
yes,
remember, Jason,
yes,
without mentioning any names of any companies, we had a company that sold, um, I don't know if I should mention, why not? So they sold firearms parts and accessories.
yeah,
And
yeah,
they
yeah,
had an awesome
yeah.
Shopify site.
And then Shopify said that they don't want to do anything to do with any sort of firearms. So even if you're
Yeah.
selling firearms, antiques, Shopify couldn't throw them out. And essentially, they gave kind of like a 6 months warning to those websites. You're out of here in 6 months. So a lot
So
of
if you're
people
in,
don't. Yeah, a lot of people don't like that someone else has kind of control in that sense of their business. And Magento, it's you literally find your own hosting provider, you host the website, you download the code, you're under the open source license, so you can customize it the way you want. Adobe can't really do much about it.
So in my example of selling pillows, you don't have to worry about that. But if you do have some type of who knows, fringe business or something that one day might fall out of favor,
Yeah, I mean,
they can turn you off.
yeah,
You can click a
yeah.
switch and you're out. Okay. All right. That's unlikely to happen 99% of the time. So.
Yeah, I mean, that might be a little like, yeah, if you're selling pillows or something or duvets, like, I don't know, like, hey, duvet, it's like, maybe you should not have anxiety over you being kicked out for those reasons, at least.
But to be fair, you don't have ownership of your code as a Shopify client. So it's like you're renting space as opposed to Magento, where you own the space, right?
Yeah, in some sense, that's a good enough analogy.
Okay. And what about, so do you find are there any other downfalls to not owning your code, like that you can see? For example, as a software as a service, you're paying a monthly fee. I guess they can jack up your monthly fee as they like, right? There's nothing you can do about it.
Other than not owning your code, no, other than the fact that you have a business, and let's say it's heavily focused online, it's just, again, a question of ownership. That technically Shopify owns your store in that sense. Are you comfortable with that? They can have final say, but what if they start regulating, sort of this big conversation online with, a lot of these companies sort of imposing stricter rules on people that using their platform? What if Shopify one day doesn't like the text descriptions you're putting on some of these items, and they don't like it? What if Shopify comes tomorrow and says, you're not using the right pronouns in your descriptions on your items? Take this off because we want to, do this and that. You might not appreciate that, and they can do something along those lines.
Okay.
That's sort of the thing.
What about Shopify as a company? Are they profitable? Like, can you add like
hard to say. Well, first of all, so you're now getting a bit into an investment perspective. So their stock right now is nearly.
No, I don't mean the stock. I mean, is there ever a worry that Shopify goes out of business? Is that
no.
Another worry? No, they're doing well.
No, I mean, the stock is at 1,300 Canadian. It's insanely priced. I'm not saying short the stock, but short the stock, because it's trading at.
No, do not short the stock.
It's trading at.
This is not an investing advice channel.
I'm not saying it's trading at insane rates,
but put your money in one of our pillows.
Okay. This is not legally blinding stock advice, but if there's ever an overpriced stock other than Tesla, it's Shopify. But no,
$1,300? Are you serious?
Yeah, 1,300 Canadian. It's gone up. Let's see. It started
a couple of years ago.
Yeah, January 2nd, it was $530 Canadian. So it's nearly, because of the pandemic. A lot of people went online, so it kind of boosted, and it's trading at an insane rate right now. Its gross profit margin that it's trading at is disgusting. So I don't think Shopify, you have to worry about Shopify going out of business. Yes, the company takes on a lot of debt, because that they're a more debt-based approach to growth. So you know how, like, just from a perspective back to their stock, a lot of stocks pay dividends. So you know what you gain value from the stock marginally going up, and then you receive a dividend from that, and then you sort of reinvest that dividend. So they pay you a portion for owning the stock. What these companies do instead is they don't pay a dividend. They take all the money they get from their stocks, and they're kind of the Amazon approach as well. They reinvest it into growth. So you won't get a dividend from the stock, but the stock can explode from a compounding perspective. So Shopify does that too. If you probably look at the company financials, they're probably in debt, but because they're also growing, but it doesn't really matter that debt so much because the growth sort of the growth percentage they have is obscene.
Yeah, they're profitable. They have a $1.62 earnings per share. That's good. Okay, so no more investment talk. I just wanted to see if they were actually making money, which they are. So that's great. So what about just to, we got about 15 minutes left, Jason. So I'd like to know open source versus, well, let's talk about Magento right now. So Magento open source versus Magento Commerce. Is it still called Magento Commerce? Pros and cons. Because in case someone's listening and they don't know, Magento open source is exactly that, right? So it's open source. And Magento Commerce costs thousands of dollars a month. So my question is, now let's just talk about Magento, because I know Shopify has Shopify Pro that costs a lot of money as well, but
yeah.
Is there also a line in the sand that tells us that you can use Magento Community or the open source Magento for the following, but once you start getting into this, you're going to have to start paying Magento handsomely? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so now you're sort of shifting the conversation. Do you go Magento open source versus Magento Commerce, and particularly Magento Commerce? Because you can take Magento Commerce and self-host it yourself, or you can buy the hosted package where they sort of manage the hosting for you. You do comes with some limitations for that. Either way, they'll charge you for Magento Commerce based off of sort of your sales. Anyways, that model doesn't worry so much. It's more the fact that you are going to have to sort of pay them. Sort of when you have had a couple of, because clients do ask that, like, oh, what's kind of the difference? There are some feature differences. Sort of the Magento Commerce, the cloud-based, you have sort of access to the order management sort of extension that they have, that big or service you could even call it at that point. But generally speaking, anything you can do in Magento Commerce you can do in Magento open source and not have to pay their fees. So let's say page builder sort of functionality exists in Magento Commerce.
Hang on a sec, Jason. Hang on a second. Say that again. Anything that you do in Magento Commerce, you can do in Magento open source?
Yeah, because you could build it yourself. So give you quite an example, page builder, okay? The page builder is available in 2.4 Commerce Edition only. But if you have an open source version, there's a couple of companies that sell the extension for a page builder. And oftentimes these extensions could be even better than the default one that Magento has. So
wow.
Coupled with the power of extensions and your ability to build out any functionality but that might be missing between the two, generally speaking, from a cost perspective, you'll have lower costs with the open source. So we do recommend usually the open source version over the Commerce Edition. And I've heard of more people, and when you sometimes do migration, like migration from open source to the Commerce version, I think I've heard of more cases where it's the opposite. People go from Commerce to sort of, Magento will call it a downgrade to open source, but I call it a liberation from their fees.
Well, that's the thing, because when you're on Commerce, it's not stopping you from having to pay a developer constantly. It's just, you have also the Magento fees every month.
Yeah. That way there's some support.
I don't want to throw Magento under the bus when it comes to their commerce solution. I'm sure there's got to be a major list of advantages to Magento Commerce.
Oh, no, there are some advantages. There are some additional features and stuff. They do offer some sort of level of support. But however, if you have a good team of Magento devs and they kind of know what they're doing, I don't see, unless you have very specifically something that is offered on Commerce and not offered on open source. Yeah. And most likely the required solution for you would be open source. And if there is something that you want that Commerce offers and open source doesn't, most likely you can just install that functionality with an extension or build it up yourself, and it would still be cheaper that way.
Yeah, that might be something that Adobe's going to be working on, is maybe building that clear advantage to using Magento Commerce, so that more people will go on Magento Commerce, because that only makes sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's Adobe. They'll if they could charge you for breathing, they'll try to figure out a way. So I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
I don't know. They keep updating my reader, and it hasn't changed in a decade. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. But Adobe's awesome. I like Adobe. They've got I like the Photoshop stuff. It's really good. So what's do you know anything about just to finish it off? We still got a few more minutes. Do you know anything about what about Shopify Pro? I think Shopify Pro was something that Shopify might have released to compete with Magento. Is that possible? And I'm just going to ask Kyler something before you answer, because I see that we're frozen on our live. Are we okay, Kyler? Or is it just me who's frozen?
On my end, it's fine.
Okay, good.
So I think we're okay.
Okay, cool. No problem. Oh, it's my fault. Sorry. All right. So Shopify Pro. Is Shopify Pro Magento? Is that what it's all about? Are you able to do more customizations?
No. Well, I'm pulling up sort of the list here from Shopify.
Let Kyler hit it up. Is there a list that Kyler can put on the screen for everyone to watch?
Sorry, say that again.
I said Jason has a list in front of him. Jason, do you want Kyler to Google anything and he can share a screen? Okay?
I mean, you could just, well, because what I wanted to sort of mention is whether it's Shopify Basic, Shopify Middle, or Advanced Shopify, as they call it, it is Shopify. So when we're talking about the differences, it's more like just some extra features. Like you're not going to be able to, with Advanced Shopify, go into the code now and change what you couldn't have in Shopify, other than the templating, which you're allowed to change in Shopify.
Mm-hmm.
That's still proprietary. So fundamentally, it's still the same product. You know, when you go Shopify Plus, what I'm just looking at sort of just their pricing here. What they list is sort of the difference is it's stuff like staff accounts. You could add 15 as opposed to 2. You know, advanced report builder, a functionality on the Plus that doesn't exist anywhere else. You know, a higher because they partnered with Canada Post. You know, a higher shipping rate. I'm sure also that I could see here the credit card rate, because remember Shopify, even though it's an e-commerce platform, the genius of Shopify is the payment processor that they own as well. That's how they make the bulk of their money, and that's why they're able to keep the actual Shopify for building the website pretty low. So Shopify, remember that Shopify's true competitor is Lightspeed, not other e-commerce sort of SaaSes like that, even though I know Lightspeed is trying to get into that sort of space. Lightspeed, another stock that's really overpriced right now, albeit a good company. It's trading. What was it, like at $55 last time?
We're gonna cut this part out.
Yeah.
I know it's live, but make it happen.
Okay, yeah. So the not professional stock advice disclaimer.
If you guys want, I can bring up the different options for Shopify or anything.
Yeah, go for it. Why not? Although Jason explained it very well, why not? Let's have it up there. That's a lot of fun. Oh, Advanced Shopify is only $2.99 a month. Wow.
I'm pretty sure they probably have other ways to up that fee. I know they have also now. So they had a bit of a, oh God, what were they called, that company? What was the big company that MailChimp? So they had a bit of a breakup with MailChimp, so they kicked kind of MailChimp off sort of. And the posturing for that was Shopify is releasing their own sort of emailing platform. So I'm sure to get full functionality from that emailing platform, they're probably going to, additional fees.
So is this Shopify Pro, what used to be Shopify Pro, sorry? Is that Shopify Pro?
Yeah. Advanced Shopify, I would imagine, a Shopify Pro.
Okay. All right, interesting.
Unless I were wrong about that. I don't think so, though.
Can you do a quick Google search just to make sure?
They're always changing terminology, so it's like...
Yeah.
I see Shopify Plus down here.
Oh, Shopify
Lite.
So
there is learn more.
There you go. Yeah, click on that. You see, that's what we're talking. Okay, so that's Shopify Plus.
Okay, yeah. So this is significantly higher than the 299. Now it's just 2,000 a month. So they probably give you with support for like any sort of integration you have to an ERP or something. They probably, if you need maybe a custom endpoint or something, they'll probably get a dev to come up and build it, or something. And so it is possible. Maybe I'm not entirely sure exactly the.
Okay. Okay, cool. That's great. Thanks, Kyler. You can take that down. We're not Shopify professionals because we don't, like I said at the beginning, we don't supply or we don't offer Shopify services here. Although we might one day, but for now we are laser focused on Magento. Okay, so I think that's. If you have nothing to add, Jason, that's not investment advice. We should probably stop it here. Any final parting words, Jason, on Magento versus Shopify?
No, it's just it's more in the sense of, again, it's tailoring. So epistemology sort of matters in sort of analyzing the two. It's sort of your methodology of thinking. So that's why with a starting point of comparing the system via the system directly, like, oh, this capability for like, oh, it's checkout capability versus checkout capability. Again, you kind of understand what they can do differently. And then again, it's always a function of your business requirement. That's really how you're going to actually answer what's better for you, Shopify versus Magento, because it's not, it's situational basically. And that's kind of a general rule of thumb for all these e-commerce platforms, because there's just so many these days. It's a very competitive space now, obviously.
Yeah.
Especially now with COVID, that also even increased the rate. Now everyone that has a little shop has to have some sort of online presence.
Yeah, I think it just came to mind now that I'm wondering, someone who is a startup and wants to make this decision and isn't very technical, but has a great idea to sell online. I guess their first stop is to try and figure out if Shopify fits their business model. Now I'm wondering where they would find that out, because if you go to a Magento shop, they're going to push Magento and say, "Oh no, Shopify is good." I guess if someone reaches out to us, we can definitely do an analysis to see if Shopify is right for you or if Magento is an overkill. So that's something to think about, right, Jason? If you're someone who doesn't really know about the differences between Magento and Shopify, where are you going to go to get the right advice, other than simply PHP, of course?
Yeah.
Because anyone you call, they're going to try and sell you what they're providing, right?
Well, there's this guy on LinkedIn called Tony.
There you go.
Tony Capozzi, the go-to guy, from what I've heard, is
As
sort
long
of
as there
and
isn't like 1,000 people asking me every month, I'll be okay.
I mean, listen, you have to be clairvoyant. You got to do your research. You got to watch videos like this, and ultimately, any major business decisions required is quite a bit of effort of studying. So there's no easy workaround studying. You got to keep in mind, someone might have biases and offer sort of a different perspective, and you got to sort of take it all in, and then sort of put that into your compiler and how you think, and then make the best possible decision you can. And again, philosophy guides a lot of this. So make sure your epistemology good, meaning the way you think, and make sure you have a good philosophy guiding you in business. And then if you have that good framework and that philosophical framework to make good decisions, doing the requisite research, you'll make the right decision.
Yeah, because in the end, it becomes a very clear decision. Like, can I get away with the fastest, cheapest solution? Which to me, the fastest, cheapest, most successful solution, one that actually works to me, is Shopify. But if you get too complicated, if you start getting, adding a lot of complicated functionality, then it's Magento. To me, that's the 1-2 punch right there.
Yeah.
And I'm going to end on that, my friends. Kyler, thank you very much. I appreciate your time and your help. And Jason, thank you very much. So make sure that you don't take a lunch, because I saw you were drinking water. That's enough. So just get back to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kyler, any parting shots, Kyler, or can we go?
Just a big thank you for everyone. Awesome comments. Please keep them coming. We're going to be trying to do this on a regular basis for you guys. So if you have questions, you have ideas, or things we like to discuss on future live streams, send me a message, write a comment, share on a post, anything. We're active, very active on LinkedIn. So please, please, please let us know, and we'll be happy to do that for you. So that is my final remarks. Thank you all for tuning into this live. Mr. Tony, Mr. Jason, thank you guys for being such amazing hosts and guests of this show. And I think we're signing off. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Let's go.
I'm going to pan to the snow as we go out. Bye, everybody.
Take care, everybody. Take care.